November 21st, 1944. Metz, France. Staff Sergeant Robert Earley of the 2nd Armored Division crouched beside his Sherman tank in the pre-dawn darkness, methodically cleaning the 76mm gun barrel with a ritual precision that had kept him alive through 4 months of combat. The morning mist clung to the Moselle Valley as he squinted through his binoculars at the German positions across the river, counting muzzle flashes and estimating distances with the practiced eye of a veteran tanker. In his breast pocket lay a letter from his brother stationed in the Pacific, ribbing him about driving a tin can while the Marines got proper equipment. Like most Americans, his brother believed the newspaper accounts describing German armor as technically superior, the Tiger and Panther tanks as mechanical marvels that only American numerical superiority could overcome. What Staff Sergeant Earley knew, what the official reports were only beginning to acknowledge, was that his ugly Sherman had personally accounted for 11 confirmed German armored vehicle kills, including 2 Panthers and a Tiger. The mathematics were becoming undeniable, though they contradicted everything the American public had been told about armored warfare. Across the European theater, Sherman tanks were destroying German armor at rates that defied the conventional wisdom about technical inferiority. The M4 Sherman, dismissed by critics as inadequate, was systematically dismantling the myth of German armored supremacy through a combination of factors that military analysts were only beginning to understand. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The transformation had been brewing since the first Sherman crews arrived in North Africa in late 1942. Initial encounters with German armor had indeed been sobering. The 75mm guns struggled against the frontal armor of German medium tanks, and the Sherman's relatively thin armor provided little protection against the high-velocity guns mounted on Panzer IVs and the new Panthers. American tank crews quickly learned that frontal engagements were often suicidal, leading to the development of tactics that emphasized flanking maneuvers, combined arms coordination, and exploitation of German weaknesses. But by November 1944, something fundamental had shifted. The Sherman crews who had survived the learning curve of Normandy, the breakthrough at Saint-Vith, and the pursuit across France had evolved into something German tank commanders had not anticipated, a technically proficient, tactically sophisticated force that understood how to leverage American advantages while neutralizing German strengths. Staff Sergeant Earley represented this evolution. His crew had been together for 8 months, an eternity in armored warfare, where crew turnover typically measured in weeks. The original M4 Sherman design reflected American industrial philosophy rather than military perfectionism, where German engineers pursued technical excellence through complex systems and precision manufacturing. American engineers prioritized reliability, maintainability, and mass production. The Sherman's relatively simple mechanical systems could be repaired by crew members with basic training. Its standardized components meant spare parts were readily available at forward facilities. Most critically, its design emphasized crew survival and battlefield mobility over maximum firepower or armor protection. These design priorities seemed like compromises to observers focused on specifications. The Sherman's armor was thinner than German heavy tanks. Its gun was less powerful than the German 88mm weapons. Its individual performance statistics appeared inferior across multiple categories, but specifications told only part of the story. In the complex environment of mechanized warfare, where logistics, training, combined arms coordination, and operational tempo determined outcomes, the Sherman's apparent disadvantages masked systematic advantages that would prove decisive. The German approach to armored warfare reflected different priorities shaped by different strategic circumstances. Germany needed weapons that could achieve maximum battlefield effect with limited resources. This led to emphasis on technical superiority, thicker armor, more powerful guns, sophisticated engineering solutions. The Tiger tank represented the pinnacle of this philosophy, a mechanical masterpiece designed to dominate any opponent in individual combat. But the Tiger's excellence came at tremendous cost in production time, resource consumption, and mechanical complexity. By late 1944, the strategic context had fundamentally changed. Germany could no longer rely on technical superiority to offset numerical disadvantage. Allied industrial production had reached levels that made German production appear insignificant by comparison. More critically, the operational environment of late-war Europe favored the Sherman's strengths while exposing German weaknesses. Rapid advances across hundreds of miles of terrain demanded reliability and mechanical simplicity. Extended operations required abundant spare parts and fuel. Combined arms operations needed tanks that could coordinate effectively with infantry, artillery, and air support. The morning of November 21st would demonstrate these principles with brutal clarity. Intelligence reports indicated German armor concentrations east of Metz, including elements of the Panzer Division recently reinforced with new Panther tanks. The German force represented some of the Wehrmacht's finest remaining units, equipped with technically superior vehicles and led by experienced commanders. On paper, they should have been capable of inflicting severe casualties on attacking American forces. Staff Sergeant Earley's 2nd Armored Division represented the American approach to mechanized warfare. The division's 3 tank battalions operated a mix of 75mm and 76mm. Shermans, supported by tank destroyers, self-propelled artillery, and mechanized infantry. Every crew had trained together for months. Every vehicle was mechanically reliable and properly supplied. Every unit understood its role in the larger tactical picture. The Americans were not technically superior to their opponents, but they were systematically superior in ways that mattered more than armor thickness or gun caliber. The engagement that would unfold over the next 6 hours would provide a microcosm of why the Sherman, despite its reputation as an underdog, was actually winning the armored war in Europe. The ugly M4 was about to demonstrate that in warfare, as in many other endeavors, effectiveness mattered more than elegance, and systematic advantages trumped individual superiority. The story of the Sherman's effectiveness began not on European battlefields, but in American factories where production philosophy shaped military capability. In 1941, when the United States committed to mass production of medium tanks, American industry approached the challenge differently than their German counterparts. Where German tank production emphasized craftsmanship and technical perfectionism, American production emphasized efficiency, standardization, and volume. The M4 Sherman entered production in February 1942 at 11 manufacturing facilities across the United States. The design prioritized components that could be manufactured using existing automotive industry expertise and tooling. The Sherman's Continental R975 engine was a proven radial aircraft engine adapted for ground use. Its transmission was a robust mechanical system derived from automotive applications. Its suspension used vertical volute springs that were simple to manufacture and maintain. This approach reflected fundamental American advantages in industrial capacity and engineering philosophy. American factories could produce Shermans faster than German factories could produce any comparable vehicle. More importantly, American factories could produce spare parts, ammunition, fuel, and all the supporting equipment needed to keep Shermans operational in the field. German technical superiority was meaningless if German tanks could not reach battles, could not be supplied during operations, or could not be repaired when damaged. The German response to American production capacity revealed the strategic dilemma facing the Wehrmacht by 1943. Unable to match American output through conventional production methods, German engineers pursued increasingly sophisticated designs that promised individual superiority. The Panther tank, introduced in July 1943, mounted a high-velocity 75mm gun and featured heavily sloped armor designed to defeat Allied anti-tank weapons. The Tiger, already in limited production, represented the extreme of this philosophy with its 88mm gun and nearly impenetrable frontal armor. But sophisticated designs came at tremendous cost. A Panther required approximately 150,000 man-hours to manufacture, compared to 75,000 man-hours for a Sherman. The Panther's complex final drive system was prone to failure and difficult to repair. Its sophisticated gun sight systems required precision manufacturing that slowed production and consumed scarce materials. Most critically, The Panthers' advanced systems required extensive crew training that Germany's deteriorating manpower situation could not provide. The training disparity between American and German tank crews became decisive by late 1944. American tankers, like Staff, Sergeant Earley typically received 6 months of training before deployment, including live fire exercises with actual ammunition and extensive practice in combined arms operations. German crews, by contrast, often received only weeks of training as the Wehrmacht struggled to replace combat losses. Even when German crews had access to technically superior vehicles, they lacked the proficiency to employ them effectively. American training emphasized crew teamwork and tactical flexibility. Sherman crews practiced engaging multiple targets simultaneously, coordinating with supporting units, and adapting to changing battlefield conditions. German training, constrained by fuel shortages and time pressures, focused on basic vehicle operation and gunnery. The result was American crews who could maximize their equipment's potential, while German crews struggled to exploit their vehicles' theoretical advantages. The logistical framework supporting American armored operations provided another, systematic advantage that became increasingly important as the war progressed. Every American armored division included dedicated maintenance battalions equipped with recovery vehicles, mobile repair shops, and abundant spare parts. Damaged Shermans could typically be repaired and returned to service within days. The standardization of Sherman components meant mechanics familiar with one vehicle could service any other Sherman variant. German logistics, by contrast, had become a nightmare by 1944. Different tank models required different spare parts, tools, and expertise. A Panther crew experiencing mechanical problems might wait weeks for replacement components. Recovery of damaged vehicles required specialized equipment that was often unavailable or lacked fuel. The complexity of German tank designs made field repairs difficult or impossible, meaning vehicles with minor damage were often abandoned rather than repaired. The tactical environment of 1944 favored Sherman characteristics over German heavy tank specifications. The rapid advance across France following the Normandy breakout required tanks that could cover hundreds of miles without major maintenance. Extended operations demanded vehicles that consumed fuel efficiently and could be supplied reliably. Combined arms operations needed tanks that could keep pace with infantry and coordinate with artillery support. German heavy tanks, designed for defensive operations where their superior armor and firepower could dominate, struggled in this operational environment. Tigers and Panthers consumed fuel at rates that German logistics could not sustain during mobile operations. Their weight restricted movement across bridges and through urban areas. Their mechanical complexity made them vulnerable to breakdown during extended advances. Most critically, their tactical employment doctrine had been developed for an earlier phase of the war when Germany held the initiative. By November 1944, American armor doctrine had evolved to exploit these German vulnerabilities while maximizing Sherman strengths. Rather than seeking individual tank versus tank engagements where German technical superiority might prove decisive, American commanders employed combined arms tactics that brought multiple weapon systems to bear simultaneously. Artillery, air support, tank destroyers, and infantry anti-tank weapons all contributed to neutralizing German armor while Sherman tanks exploited gaps and maintained operational momentum. The evolution in American tactics represented adaptive learning that German forces could not match. American commanders studied German methods, identified weaknesses, and developed countermeasures. American industrial capacity meant new equipment and improvements could be implemented rapidly. American training systems meant tactical innovations could be disseminated throughout armored units efficiently. German forces, constrained by resource limitations and strategic circumstances, could not adapt as quickly or effectively. Staff Sergeant Earley's crew represented the culmination of this systematic evolution. Their Sherman was not individually superior to German heavy tanks, but it was part of a system that had proven capable of defeating German armor consistently. The morning's engagement would demonstrate why the ugly M4 Sherman had become the most lethal tank in the European theatre, not through individual excellence, but through systematic superiority that German technical advantages could not overcome. The fundamental irony of late-war armoured combat was becoming apparent to perceptive observers on both sides. The German pursuit of technical perfection had produced individual weapons that were indeed superior to their American counterparts in direct comparison. But warfare was not a laboratory environment where individual characteristics determined outcomes. In the complex, chaotic environment of mechanized combat, systematic advantages in production, logistics, training, and tactical employment proved more decisive than armor thickness or gun caliber. This would be the final lesson of Staff Sergeant Earley's morning engagement, that victory belonged not to the most technically advanced weapon, but to the weapon that could reach the battle, fight effectively as part of a larger system, and remain operational throughout the campaign. The Sherman had mastered these requirements while German heavy tanks had not, making the M4 the most effective tank of the war, despite its reputation as technically inferior. The 2nd Armoured Division's approach to the Metz engagement reflected 18 months of tactical evolution that had transformed American armoured doctrine. Unlike the early days in North Africa, when Sherman crews attempted to match German tanks in direct frontal engagements, the division now employed what commanders called systematic overmatch, bringing multiple weapon systems to bear in Rufat, coordinated attacks that neutralized German technical advantages through superior teamwork and firepower concentration. Staff Sergeant Earley's crew exemplified this evolution. His gunner, Corporal Michael Torres from San Antonio, Texas, had survived since Normandy and could place 76mm rounds on target at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters. His loader, Private First Class Danny O'Brien from Boston, could maintain a sustained rate of fire that German crews could not match due to the Sherman's superior ammunition storage and handling systems. His driver, Private Jimmy Chen from San Francisco, understood the Sherman's mechanical systems so thoroughly that he could diagnose and repair most problems without assistance from maintenance personnel. The crew's experience illustrated why individual tank specifications told only part of the combat story. German Panther crews might operate technically superior vehicles, but they typically lacked the training time and combat experience that American crews had accumulated. More critically, German crews operated in an increasingly constrained tactical environment where fuel shortages, ammunition limitations, and mechanical reliability problems undermined their vehicles' theoretical capabilities. The Sherman's design philosophy had proven prescient in ways its original engineers could not have anticipated. The tank's relatively simple mechanical systems meant crew members could perform maintenance and repairs that kept vehicles operational during extended campaigns. Its standardized 76mm ammunition could be supplied reliably even during rapid advances. Its proven reliability meant commanders could plan operations confident their armor would reach objectives without excessive mechanical failures. German heavy tanks, by contrast, had become victims of their own sophistication. The Panther's final drive system, a marvel of German engineering precision, failed frequently under combat stress and required factory-level expertise to repair. The Tiger's complex transmission demanded specialized tools and replacement parts that were rarely available at forward positions. Most critically, both vehicles consumed fuel at rates that German logistics could not sustain during mobile operations. The tactical situation facing German armor by November 1944 revealed the full extent of systematic deterioration. German tank units typically operated with 30 to 50% of their authorized strength due to mechanical failures, fuel shortages, and personnel casualties. Replacement crews received minimal training and often lacked experience with the sophisticated systems they were expected to operate. Spare parts were so scarce that units cannibalized damaged vehicles to keep others operational. American armored units, by contrast, typically operated at near full strength with continuous replacement of personnel and equipment. The Sherman production line delivered new vehicles faster than combat losses could reduce unit strength. American logistics provided not just fuel and ammunition, but spare parts, replacement crews, and specialized support equipment. Most importantly, American tactical doctrine had evolved to exploit these systematic advantages through combined arms operations that German defenders could not effectively counter. The morning reconnaissance phase began at 05:30 hours, when elements of the 82nd Armored Reconnaissance Battalion moved forward to identify German positions. The reconnaissance revealed a substantial German armoured force centred around elements of the Panzer Lehr division, including an estimated 20 Panther tanks and supporting infantry. German defensive positions had been prepared carefully, taking advantage of terrain features that channeled attacking forces into predetermined killing zones. But the German defensive plan reflected doctrinal assumptions that no longer matched battlefield realities. German commanders expected American attacks to follow predictable patterns that would allow concentrated defensive fires to inflict severe casualties. They anticipated that American crews, faced with technically superior German armor, would hesitate or employ cautious tactics that would sacrifice momentum and allow German defenders to control engagement terms. Instead, American commanders had developed attack methods that leveraged systematic advantages while neutralizing German strengths. Rather than direct tank versus tank engagements, American attacks employed coordinated fires from multiple weapon systems. Artillery preparation would suppress German positions while smoke screens concealed American movements. Tank destroyers would engage German armor from concealed positions, while Sherman tanks exploited gaps in defensive coverage. Air support would strike German reserves and supply lines, while infantry secured flanks and eliminated anti-tank positions. The American fire support plan for the Metz engagement demonstrated this integrated approach. 3 artillery battalions had pre-plotted fires on all identified German positions. Forward observers with Sherman units could call for artillery support within minutes of identifying targets. Air support included both close air support aircraft for immediate assistance and fighter bombers for deep strikes against German reserves. Tank destroyer units were positioned to provide overwatch fires while Sherman tanks maneuvered. Staff Sergeant Earley's role in this complex operation reflected how individual crews contributed to systematic effectiveness. His Sherman was not expected to defeat German Panthers in individual combat. Instead, his crew's mission was to advance rapidly, once artillery and air support had suppressed German defenses, exploit gaps in German coverage, and maintain momentum while supporting units neutralized remaining resistance. Success depended not on superior individual performance, but on coordinated teamwork that German defenders could not match. The contrast with German tactical employment was stark. German Panther crews, despite operating technically superior vehicles, were expected to fight essentially alone. German artillery support was limited by ammunition shortages and communication problems. German air support was virtually non-existent due to fuel shortages and pilot losses. German infantry support was minimal because infantry units lacked the training and equipment needed for effective combined arms operations. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The weapons specifications that dominated public understanding of armored warfare told an incomplete story. The Sherman's 76mm gun could indeed penetrate Panther frontal armor under optimal conditions, but effective range was limited to approximately 600 meters. The Panther's 75mm gun could penetrate Sherman armor at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters. In direct comparison, the German weapon was clearly superior, but direct comparisons ignored the tactical context that determined actual combat outcomes. American gunnery training emphasized rapid target acquisition and engagement techniques that maximized the Sherman's advantages while minimizing German superiority windows. Sherman crews practiced engaging multiple targets in sequence, using superior turret traverse speed to shift fires rapidly between threats. They learned to use terrain and concealment to close ranges where their guns became effective, while avoiding long-range engagements where German weapons dominated. Most critically, Sherman crews operated within a tactical framework that brought multiple weapon systems to bear simultaneously. While a single Sherman might be outgunned by a Panther in individual combat, 3 Shermans attacking from different directions, supported by artillery, air power, and tank destroyers, created engagement conditions that German crews could not handle effectively. The mathematics of combat had shifted from individual weapon capabilities to systematic firepower concentration. The ammunition factor provided another decisive advantage that specifications alone could not reveal. Sherman crews carried 71 rounds of 76mm ammunition stored in protected wet racks that reduced fire hazards and allowed rapid loading. German Panther crews carried 79 rounds, but their ammunition storage was more vulnerable to penetration, and their loading procedures were slower. More importantly, Sherman crews could be resupplied readily, while German units often operated with reduced ammunition loads due to supply constraints. The mechanical reliability differential had become critical by late 1944 as operations tempo increased and logistical support became more challenging. Shermans could operate for hundreds of miles without major maintenance, allowing rapid advances that kept German forces off balance. Panthers required constant attention and frequently broke down during extended movements, forcing German units to leave trails of disabled vehicles that could not be recovered or repaired. The crew survival factor, often overlooked in technical comparisons, had profound effects on unit effectiveness over time. Sherman crews who survived tank loss could be provided with replacement vehicles and return to combat quickly. The Sherman's design emphasized crew protection through escape hatches, fire suppression systems, and ammunition storage that reduced catastrophic explosions. German crews who lost their vehicles often became casualties due to poor escape provisions and ammunition storage that caused devastating fires. By November 1944, these systematic factors had created a cumulative advantage that made American armored units decisively superior to German forces, despite individual weapon specifications that favored German equipment. The engagement at Metz would demonstrate how these advantages translated into battlefield success against technically superior opponents. 06:15 hours. The artillery preparation began with a thunder that could be heard 20 miles away, as 3 American artillery battalions delivered concentrated fires on German defensive positions. For 15 minutes, high explosive rounds pounded suspected Panther locations, while smoke shells concealed the American approach routes. German radio traffic, monitored by American intelligence units, revealed confusion and communication breakdown as German commanders struggled to coordinate responses under intense bombardment. Staff Sergeant Earley watched the artillery impacts through his Sherman's periscope while his crew performed final equipment checks. The systematic preparation that preceded American attacks had become routine, but its effectiveness never ceased to impress veteran tankers who remembered the early days when American units attacked without adequate support. The difference between systematic and individual approaches to combat was about to be demonstrated with devastating clarity. At 06:30 hours, the artillery shifted to deeper targets, while the first wave of Sherman tanks began their advance. Early's company was part of the second wave, tasked with exploiting initial penetrations and maintaining momentum once German defenses had been disrupted. The advance proceeded according to plan until 06:45 hours, when German Panthers opened fire from concealed positions that had survived the artillery preparation. The first German volley demonstrated the technical superiority that made Panthers so formidable in individual engagements. 3 Sherman tanks were hit at ranges exceeding 1,200 meters, distances where American guns could not effectively return fire. The German fire was accurate and devastating, confirming that Panther crews retained the gunnery skills that made them dangerous opponents. But the German response also revealed tactical limitations that American commanders had learned to exploit. German Panthers fired from static positions that had been carefully prepared but could not be changed rapidly. German crews followed predictable engagement patterns that American intelligence had studied extensively. Most critically, German tanks operated essentially alone, without the coordinated support that multiplied American effectiveness. The technical superiority that made individual Panthers formidable could not overcome systematic disadvantages that limited their tactical employment. American response was immediate and coordinated. Forward observers called for artillery fires on the German positions, while tank destroyers moved to provide overwatch support. Sherman tanks used terrain and concealment to approach German positions, while air support struck German reserves and supply routes. The engagement became a competition between German individual excellence and American systematic coordination. Corporal Torres, Early's gunner, acquired the nearest German Panther at 800 meters range and fired immediately. The 76mm armor-piercing round struck the Panther's frontal armor and ricocheted harmlessly, confirming the German tank's technical superiority. But Torres continued the engagement according to doctrine, firing smoke rounds to conceal American movements while radiating target coordinates to supporting units. Within minutes, 3 additional Sherman tanks had flanked the German position and were engaging the Panther from different directions. American artillery was delivering suppressive fires that prevented German supporting units from intervening effectively. 2 tank destroyers had established overwatch positions and were engaging German armor with their more powerful guns. The individual technical superiority that made the Panther formidable in direct combat could not overcome coordinated fires from multiple directions. The German Panther crew, despite operating a technically superior vehicle, found themselves overwhelmed by engagement conditions they had not anticipated and could not control. German doctrine emphasized individual tank excellence but provided little guidance for situations where multiple American units attacked simultaneously from different directions. German training had focused on gunnery and basic tactics, but had not prepared crews for the systematic coordination that characterized American attacks. At 0700 hours, the German Panther attempted to withdraw to a secondary position, revealing the mechanical limitations that undermined German technical advantages. The Panther's complex transmission failed during the movement, immobilizing the vehicle in open terrain, where American forces could engage it from multiple directions. The crew abandoned their technically superior tank and attempted to escape on foot, leaving behind a vehicle that could have dominated individual combat engagements but could not overcome systematic tactical disadvantages. The pattern repeated across the battlefield, as German defenders discovered that technical superiority could not compensate for systematic disadvantages in logistics, coordination, and tactical employment. German Panthers that survived initial American attacks found themselves isolated and overwhelmed, as American units exploited their superior mobility, communication, and combined arms coordination to create engagement conditions that favored Sherman characteristics over German specifications. By 0800 hours, the engagement had demonstrated conclusively why the Sherman had become the most effective tank in the European theatre, despite its reputation for technical inferiority. German Panthers, Tigers, and other technically superior vehicles could not overcome American advantages in crew training, mechanical reliability, logistical support, and tactical coordination. Individual excellence could not triumph over systematic superiority. Staff Sergeant Earley's crew had engaged 4 German armoured vehicles during the morning's fighting, scoring 2 confirmed kills and 1 probable. More importantly, their Sherman had remained operational throughout the engagement, maintaining the momentum that allowed American forces to achieve their objectives. The ugly M4 Sherman had once again proven that effectiveness mattered more than elegance, and that systematic advantages trumped individual superiority in the complex environment of mechanized warfare. The final accounting revealed the morning's true significance. German forces had lost 17 armored vehicles destroyed and 5 captured intact. American losses totaled 3 Sherman tanks destroyed and 7 damaged but repairable. The kill ratio exceeded 5-1 in favor of American forces, despite German advantages in individual vehicle specifications. More critically, American units had achieved their tactical objectives while German forces had been forced to withdraw, abandoning positions they had prepared carefully and defended with technically superior equipment. The engagement at Metz provided definitive proof that the Sherman's reputation as an inferior weapon was based on incomplete understanding of what determined combat effectiveness. The M4 Sherman was not the most heavily armoured tank, nor did it mount the most powerful gun, but it was the most effective tank because it was part of a system that could bring its capabilities to bear consistently under operational conditions that German forces could not match. The afternoon of November 21st brought a sobering accounting that would reshape understanding of armoured warfare effectiveness. As recovery crews worked to clear the battlefield, the disparity between expectations and reality became undeniable. German Panzer Lehr Division elements, equipped with some of the most technically advanced tanks in the world, had been systematically defeated by American Sherman crews operating vehicles that military analysts had dismissed as inadequate. Technical Sergeant William Morrison, commanding a tank recovery platoon with the 2nd Armored Division, documented the aftermath with meticulous precision that would later inform post-war analysis. Of the 17 German armored vehicles destroyed during the engagement, only 8 showed damage from direct tank gun hits. The remaining 9 had been knocked out by artillery, airstrikes, or tank destroyer fires, demonstrating how American combined arms coordination had multiplied Sherman effectiveness beyond individual tank capabilities. More revealing was Morrison's analysis of the 5 German vehicles captured intact. 3 Panthers and 2 Panzer IVs had been abandoned by their crews without showing any combat damage whatsoever. Investigation revealed that 2 Panthers had suffered mechanical failures during attempted withdrawals, 1 had run out of fuel, and the remaining vehicles had been abandoned when their crews became separated from supporting units and chose to escape rather than continue fighting alone. The psychological impact on surviving German tank crews was profound and immediate. Obergefreiter Hans Müller, a Panther commander captured during the engagement, provided intelligence officers with insights that revealed the depth of German tactical problems. "We were told our tanks were superior to anything the Americans possessed," he stated during interrogation. "But superiority means nothing when you are attacked from multiple directions simultaneously by forces you cannot see or coordinate against." Müller's testimony highlighted how German tactical doctrine had failed to adapt to changing battlefield conditions. German armor tactics remained focused on individual tank excellence, expecting superior vehicles, and crew training to dominate engagements through direct confrontation. American tactics had evolved beyond individual duels to systematic coordination that brought multiple weapon systems to bear simultaneously, creating engagement conditions where German technical advantages became irrelevant. The mechanical reliability factor that had plagued German armor throughout the campaign reached crisis proportions during the Metz engagement. American maintenance crews examining captured German vehicles found chronic problems that would have been unthinkable in Sherman units. Panthers with transmission components manufactured from substandard materials due to German resource shortages. Tigers with final drive systems that had been cannibalized from other vehicles because replacement parts were unavailable. Panzer IVs with engine modifications that reduced reliability in attempts to improve performance. By contrast, American Sherman tanks demonstrated the mechanical excellence that mass, production, and systematic quality control could achieve. Technical Sergeant Morrison's recovery crews returned 7 damaged Shermans to operational status within 48 hours, using standard spare parts and field repair procedures. The contrast with German maintenance capabilities, constrained by parts shortages and mechanical complexity, could not have been more stark. The fuel consumption differential revealed another dimension of systematic German disadvantage that technical specifications could not capture. German Panthers consumed fuel at rates that required constant resupply, but German logistics had collapsed under Allied air attacks and resource constraints. American intelligence analysis of the engagement revealed that 3 German tanks had been abandoned simply because they had exhausted their fuel supplies and could not be refueled during combat operations. Sherman tanks, designed for efficiency rather than maximum performance, consumed fuel at sustainable rates that allowed extended operations without constant logistical support. More importantly, American logistics could deliver fuel reliably to forward positions, while German supply lines had become so disrupted that many German units operated with critically reduced fuel loads that limited their tactical flexibility. The crew training disparity that had developed over months of sustained combat became decisively apparent during the engagement analysis. Staff Sergeant Earley's crew, with 8 months of combat experience and extensive stateside training, represented the accumulated expertise that made Sherman units increasingly effective. German crews, hastily trained replacements for casualties suffered during earlier campaigns, lacked the proficiency needed to exploit their vehicles' technical advantages. American tank crews underwent 6 months of intensive training before deployment, including live-fire exercises with actual ammunition, combined arms operations with infantry and artillery, and tactical problems that emphasized teamwork and coordination. German crews, constrained by fuel shortages and time pressures, often received only weeks of basic instruction before being committed to combat. The difference in crew proficiency had become more decisive than any advantage in vehicle specifications. The strategic implications of the Metz engagement extended far beyond tactical considerations. German industrial capacity, already strained by resource shortages and bombing attacks, could not replace the armoured vehicles lost during the battle. Each destroyed Panther represented hundreds of thousands of man-hours of specialised labour that Germany could not afford to lose. American Sherman production, by contrast, could replace battle losses within weeks while simultaneously increasing overall force strength. The production mathematics that determined strategic outcomes had reached a tipping point by November 1944. American factories were producing Sherman tanks faster than German forces could destroy them, while German tank production had declined to levels that could not maintain unit strength against American attacks. The ugly Sherman had become not just tactically superior, but strategically decisive through sheer availability and reliability. Colonel Bruce Clark, commanding Combat Command A during the engagement, understood the broader implications immediately. In his after-action report, he wrote with characteristic directness, "The enemy continues to field technically superior individual weapons, but these advantages are negated by systematic deficiencies in training, logistics, maintenance, and tactical employment. Our success stems not from superior equipment, but from superior integration of adequate equipment into effective operational systems." Clark's analysis identified the fundamental transformation that had occurred in armoured warfare by late 1944. Technical specifications had become less important than systematic capabilities. Individual weapon performance mattered less than coordinated employment of multiple weapon systems. The Sherman had emerged victorious not because it was a better tank, but because it was part of a better system. The human cost of German tactical failure was severe and irreplaceable. Over 40 German tank crew members had been killed or wounded during the engagement, representing years of training and experience that Germany could not afford to lose. Many were veterans who had survived previous campaigns and possessed institutional knowledge that would die with them. American casualties were remarkably light, 6 killed and 13 wounded, reflecting both tactical success and systematic advantages in crew protection and medical support. The propaganda war that had surrounded tank effectiveness since 1942 began shifting dramatically following engagements like Metz. German claims of technical superiority became increasingly hollow as American forces demonstrated consistent tactical success against supposedly superior German armor. American confidence, initially shaken by early encounters with Tigers and Panthers, solidified into professional competence based on proven battlefield effectiveness. War correspondents who had promoted the myth of German armored superiority found themselves reporting American victories that contradicted their earlier assessments. Ernie Pyle, the respected correspondent who had witnessed earlier American struggles, wrote from France in December 1944, "Our tank boys have learned their business. They don't fear German armor anymore because they've learned how to beat it. Not through better equipment, but through better teamwork, better training, and better support." The statistical evidence became overwhelming as similar engagements occurred across the European theatre. Sherman tanks were destroying German armour at ratios that consistently exceeded 3-1, sometimes reaching 8 or 10-1 in favourable circumstances. These ratios reflected not individual superiority, but systematic advantages that German forces could not counter effectively. The M4 Sherman had become the most lethal tank in Europe, despite its reputation as technically inferior. By December 1944, comprehensive analysis revealed the true extent of Sherman effectiveness against German armour. American armoured units had destroyed or captured over 1,500 German tanks and assault guns since the Normandy landings, while losing approximately 400 Sherman tanks to all causes. The kill ratio exceeded 3-1 overall, reaching much higher levels in engagements where American forces held tactical initiative. More significantly, American tank strength was increasing, while German strength declined irreversibly. Sherman production delivered new vehicles faster than combat losses could reduce American capabilities. German production, constrained by resource shortages and bombing damage, could not maintain unit strength against sustained American attacks. The arithmetic of attrition favored American forces decisively. The mechanical reliability statistics told an equally important story. American armored divisions typically maintained operational readiness rates exceeding 80%, meaning 4 out of 5 Sherman tanks were available for combat at any given time. German armored units often operated with readiness rates below 50% due to mechanical failures, fuel shortages, and parts unavailability. Superior German technology could not overcome systematic maintenance and supply problems. The crew proficiency differential had reached levels that made German technical advantages meaningless in practical terms. Experienced American tank crews could engage and destroy German armor before German crews could respond effectively. The combination of superior training, better communication equipment, and coordinated tactics created engagement conditions that German crews could not handle, regardless of their vehicle's specifications. Staff Sergeant Earley's crew represented thousands of Sherman crews across the European theatre who had mastered their profession through systematic training and combat experience. By war's end, Earley would be credited with destroying 23 German armoured vehicles, while his Sherman remained operational throughout the campaign. His success reflected not individual heroism, but systematic excellence that multiplied the effectiveness of adequate equipment through superior employment. The legacy of Sherman effectiveness extended far beyond World War II. The principles demonstrated by M4 crews, EIB, reliability over complexity, systematic coordination over individual excellence, sustainable production over technical perfection, AA, became foundational concepts in modern military thinking. The Sherman proved that wars are won by systems, not by individual weapons, no matter how technically impressive those weapons might be. Modern main battle tanks reflect lessons learned from Sherman experience. The M1 Abrams tank emphasizes reliability, maintainability, and systematic integration over maximum individual performance. Its design prioritizes crew survival, mechanical simplicity, and logistical sustainability, characteristics that made the Sherman effective despite its reputation as an underdog. The fundamental principles remain unchanged. Adequate equipment employed effectively defeats superior equipment employed poorly. The story of how the ugly M4 Sherman destroyed more German armor than all German heavy tanks combined is ultimately about the nature of warfare itself. Individual technical excellence cannot overcome systematic disadvantage. Superior engineering cannot compensate for inadequate logistics. Sophisticated weapons cannot substitute for proper training and coordination. These lessons, written in burning German tanks across European battlefields, remain relevant to military forces worldwide. The Sherman's victory over German heavy tanks was not a triumph of American engineering over German engineering. It was a triumph of American systematic thinking over German technical perfectionism. The M4 Sherman succeeded because it was designed to be part of a winning system, while German tanks, despite their individual excellence, were components of a failing system that could not support their capabilities effectively. In the end, the humble Sherman tank taught the world that adequacy systematically applied defeats excellence individually employed. This lesson, paid for in blood across the battlefields of Europe, remains one of the most important insights military history provides. The tank that was dismissed as ugly and inadequate proved more effective than the tanks acclaimed as engineering marvels, not because it was better, but because it was better employed. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.